and welcome to the Monday evening.
Ball like I do after dark. It's a must listen.
It's where I go to get my hoops fixed.
This is Field of 68 after dark. Hello and welcome in to Field of 68 after dark. College basketball is back. It might have been a lighter slate on a Wednesday, but that doesn't mean that we didn't have a shocker, because we absolutely did, which we're going to talk about. Villanova going down at home to Columbia. Just a dreadful start to the season for Kyle Neptune. We'll break that down here momentarily. Real quick, we're going four wide. I'm John Martin. He's John Henson. He's Matt McCall. Newcomer here. We got a rookie in the building. Mike LaTulip is with us here this year at Field of 68 and the media network here. So, Mike, we're going to start with you, man. We're going. This isn't hazing. We don't do hazing in 2024, right? But we are going to throw it to you. Villanova goes down in pretty humiliating fashion here. It's big favorites over Columbia. What does this say about Kyle Neptune, his tenure at Villanova, and that where that program is right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sad part right now was the result tonight that stunning? I mean, it's stunning, right? Like, you lose to Columbia, but from over the years, it's been trending in this direction. And I think the overarching theme here is, when you hire based off of familiarity alone, that's when you really, I think, back yourself into a corner. We're in a day and age right now where you get left behind if you're trying to preserve tradition of old regimes. There's too much mobility for players nowadays. And I think that's what Villanova's, I think, struggled to recapture. And it reminds me, like, think about over the years with, like, go back to UConn. I hate to bring UConn in this early, but go back to UConn in like 2012. Calhoun leaves, Ali takes over. Ali inherits a roster of Shabazz Napier, Ryan Boatwright, DeAndre Daniels. Not only do those guys stay there because it was more restrictive to move and have mobility, they stayed there for 2 more years after that. So you had more of a core that you could build with. That's just not the case today. So I think that's part of the issue, is they've kind of lost who they are. This is one of the better programs in college basketball in the 2010s, without question. And they've strayed pretty far away from that. So again, the result tonight isn't surprising. And I think it's pretty early on in the season if you're Kyle Neptune to be thinking about how hot your seat is.
Matt, like, what's not clicking? Because obviously, I mean, this was supposed to be continuity. It was all about continuity when Jay Wright stepped down. And I mean, even down to the players, like Mike mentioned, and even just from the jump, this has never felt like continuing any kind of tradition there at Nova. Like, what's not working for Kyle in that program?
Well, let's talk about this. Like, this is not easy to do, right? It's not easy to walk in and take over for a legend. That's why I have such great respect for what John Shire's doing at Duke, what Hubert Davis is doing at North Carolina. When these legends have walked away and guys are taking over for them, there are unbelievable expectations. And expectations are one of the hardest things to deal with in all of sports. I think the most disappointing thing with just their performance tonight is there was no fire. There was no passion. I mean, to give up 90 points to a Columbia team. And first of all, shout out Columbia, right? I mean, Jim Ingles, to go in there and get a win, let's give them credit. But to give up 90 points the way they did, there was just no fire and no passion. But it's not easy to do what he's been asked to do. And again, he's not turning down the job. He had 1 year as a head coach at Fordham. He has never gotten to 20 wins in his head coaching career yet. And it's hard. I don't want to say it because everybody's going to give me a hard time. Winning is hard. It's hard. Winning is hard. But when you take over for one of these guys and these expectations are the way they are, That's a whole nother animal that he's having to deal with. When he lays his head on the pillow at night, he knows it's Villanova. And the expectation is not to win 20 games. The expectation is to go to the Final Four, to win a Big East championship. And it's a difficult task.
John, winning is hard, no question. But is it supposed to be this hard at Villanova against Columbia? I mean, isn't that the issue, that it's hard against Columbia at home at Villanova?
I think you see Columbia on paper, Ivy League school. We're going to walk in here and show these boys what's going on. And that's what happens. They got after him. You gave them 90 points. Villanova's had a few questionable losses over the years with Coach Neptune. Yeah. So, like we said, are we surprised? Not really. But it is shocking to lose your first game, with Poplar and Brickus, Brickus I loved at LaSalle. So, for him, I think it's going to be an adjustment as well. I thought he was a little undersized. So it's going to be an adjustment for him playing in the Big East. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes along, because he will be a big part of what they have to do to win. But other than that, man, they've got to figure it out. It's a long season. They can recover from this. At least you lose now early, so everyone's going to come in a little more humble, a little more ready to listen, and hopefully get on the right track.
Yeah, I think the notable thing about the notable losses is that so many of those are regional schools, 2 regional schools, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Temple, Penn, Drexel. I mean, I don't know, Mike, how different does it hit when the losses are to schools that are in your 100-mile radius like that?
I mean, we've seen it over the years. They've gone into the Palestra and lost, and those are supposed to be games where you take care of tradition and win them. And look, I think what this is doing to the Big East Conference, right? I mean, they got 3 teams in the NCAA tournament last year. That trend has continued to go down. As 3 years ago it was 6, 2 years ago it was 5, last year it was 3, and Villanova's they've been just a foundation, it feels like in that conference, and for them to be where they're at right now, I think it hurts the whole entire conference. So I mean, you have DePaul, you have Georgetown, you have teams that have been down there for a little while, but I think if you asked us 3 years ago, 4 years ago, if we thought Villanova would get to this point, I don't think any of us would believe it.
Matt, last question on this before we move to some other games that went down today. In terms of, and I don't know the answer, and I don't know that anybody necessarily knows the answer in terms of internally what the administration is thinking, but what is your patience if you're Villanova? I mean, is it long? Just what's your threshold for how much you can take for a program with such tradition like Villanova?
Yeah, here's the biggest challenge for Kyle Neptune is keeping everyone focused. Okay, because look, they win 18 games last year. The year before they win 17. That's not the standard at Villanova. And they lose this game, the first game of the season. It's early. I mean, it's the first week of the season, but now here comes all the naysayers. Here comes all the noise. Here comes the hot seat that our boy Jeff Goodman loves to throw everybody on. And can everybody within that program stay focused? He's got to pull everybody together, because what happens is when all this noise starts happening, then your staff starts wondering about what's next. Your players start wondering about what's next. That's a hard thing as a head coach to manage, is when it starts to go one way, to steer this thing back to going the right way. And again, it is early, but all the noise is now starting, because there was some noise coming out of last year, missing the NCAA tournament, not getting the 20 wins. There's noise. And is he the right guy for the job? And then when you lose the first game of the season to a Columbia team that has struggled mightily in years past, now the noise is getting cranked up even more. And how does everyone else in the program react to that? That's his biggest challenge. Can he get everybody connected and on the same page? Because now he's not going to be the only one that's hearing or listening to the noise. Everybody within the program is. And if one person starts going the opposite way of what they're trying to accomplish, they have no shot.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 sides of this game, right? I mean, we've been talking about Villanova and how tragic that loss was. But Columbia won this game, and we actually we've got video from the celebration, as you might imagine, in the locker room. Take a watch. Yeah, they're getting after it.
We're not going,
Coach, go in
they're
there.
not
Go
going.
in there and get the water shower, Coach. Come on, man. What are you doing? What are you waiting on?
They're not going to study hall tomorrow. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah, they are.
John,
Vincent. Oh yeah, they are.
Did
At
you have
that school,
anything like
they ain't got
that?
no choice.
I don't know, man. You know, I would celebrate this one. Maybe at a dive bar somewhere.
I mean, you're talking about a team who during COVID got their whole season canceled. They didn't even play a game. The whole season was canceled. And they're coming out of that. They go 4-22, 7-22. They win 13 games last year. In the first game of the season this year, they go in and beat Villanova. Credit to them. I mean, I know that we have to talk about Villanova and what does this mean for them and what does this mean for Kyle Neptune going forward. But Jim Ingles, man, credit to you. And I know we'll get to our toast of the night later. I don't know if I just let mine out of the bag, but credit those guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just expect Geronimo Rubio de la Rosa to come into your gym and not light it up. I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got to check the scouting report on him. All right, bouncing around because there were some other games tonight. Indiana, of course, led by Mike Woodson. I don't know if he's on the hot seat or not. I don't know. It sort of feels like he decides that, but it certainly has been a little more turbulent there than Indiana fans would like. They got their season underway tonight with a nice win over SIU. John, for Mike Woodson, what do you want to see? What do you want to see for him and this team this season? Like, what feels right in terms of the direction for the Hoosiers?
You know, I watched the game tonight. I don't love the two big lineup. Ballo's kind of slow. They're kind of sluggish. They actually play a lot better when he was sitting down. They got the ball up and down. But I just want to see them win the games they're supposed to win and steal a few. I don't think we're expecting them to be world beaters, but it is Indiana. They have a nicer size NIL. They've got some good guys out of the portal. And that's kind of where I see, and if Indiana can stay, I mean, on TV they were saying they're one of the more talented teams in the Big Ten, so they should be up there towards the top, and maybe some kind of continuity in winning. Right, we want to see Indiana sustain and be a good team. It's good for college basketball. I enjoy watching them as well, so I think that's the biggest thing for me with Mike Woodson this year. Hey, you put together a solid team. Now let's start to translate that to wins and not disappointments, which, the last couple of years, whenever we start believing, they usually let us down.
Yeah, Mike, in terms of the formula for them this year, I mean, they shot the ball pretty well, 38% from three, obviously with the bigs that John talked about. I mean, is that what it needs to look like? I mean, I don't know if you can expect to get 13 to 17 from McKenzie every single night, but is that sort of just the gist of how Indiana needs to win basketball games?
Well, I think John touched on a good point. I think when you look at playing those two bigs, you're going to have spacing issues, for one. And two, like Mackenzie Mbako thrives when he's at the four. And when he's playing with either Malik Renew or Ballo, not both of them. I mean, I get you have great positional size when you have those three on the court together, but I still think that like you're going to have to really stagger those five men's minutes. Because I do like what Renew can bring at the five. I think Ballo, it's a give and a take, right? I mean, he can be so dominant down low, and he can also be turnover prone, and he can also miss free throws. And so you play that game night in and night out. And look, I think Miles Rice, it's any time that Indiana's had success in the last 10 years, right? I'd say there's two teams that stick out. 2 years ago with Jalen Hood-Schifino running the point. Obviously, Trace Jackson-Davis, big part of that. And then, whatever it was, 8, 9, 10 years ago when I was playing at Illinois, when Yogi Ferrell was running the show. Indiana has been good when they've had a point guard. And so we can talk about Ballo and talk about their bigs, but it comes down to Miles Rice and how productive he is this year, how much he gets others involved, how much he pushes the pace so that they don't get bogged down in the half court, so that they don't run into those spacing issues. That's what's on the table. And for Mike Woodson, right, like you get a lot of talent that comes in. They pony up the NIL, right? Donors come in, they pony up the NIL, and expectations follow that. And it's Indiana. And you've been, I think there's a misnomer a little bit with Mike Woodson. I mean, he's been to the tournament 2 of his 3 years. Kyle Neptune would probably take that at this point. But look, you got to find a way to like restore grit, I think, to that program. There were times last year I thought they wilted in some areas. I love the talent. I love their pieces. Now it becomes like the chess match a little bit of how Woodson decides to put it all together.
Matt, what do you think? What do you think of everything you just said?
Yeah, I totally agree too. And when you talk about like hot seat or expectations, I mean, Indiana's a blue blood, right? I mean, it's a blue blood. So I don't care who the head coach is. 20 wins is not the standard. The standard is to get to the Final Four and try to win a national championship and compete for a national championship, compete for a Big Ten championship. So, look, last year the 3-point shooting, I don't think you can call it bad. I think you can call it abysmal. Tonight they go 6 for 16. They shoot 38% from the 3-point line. I think that's a big key for this team. Can they be a consistent 3-point shooting team and compete for a Big Ten championship? But that's when you talk about pressure on coaches and different things like that. There's none more than schools like Indiana, Kentucky, Carolina, Duke, UCLA. I mean, those standards are above everybody else in the country because they are the quote unquote blue bloods.
Yeah. So obviously got those two games tonight. There was another intriguing debut, at least for one of the freshmen that we got tonight over at Rutgers. We'll touch on that. But a historic night for one player in college basketball, that being Ryan Kalkbrenner at Creighton. Let me get this record up. Prior to tonight, the last player with 20 field goals on 90% shooting in a D1 game was Bill Walton against the Memphis State University Tigers in 1973. Now, we don't talk about that shit in Memphis, all right? We don't talk
Were you that Johnny Martin, were you at the game? Were you at the game?
It's just when you're born in Memphis, you have that scar coming out the womb. You got 73, the scar coming out the womb. So it was did you ever have anything close to that, John, as a big man? 49 points on 90% shooting from the field, high school, anywhere? I mean, that's a hell of a night.
I scored a 40 in high school, but that's different. That's a different beast in Division I basketball. I mean, I always tell people, and they're like, "Oh, it's 40 against this guy, that guy." You couldn't score 40 in the gym by yourself. So that's a big feat, man. To be up there with Bill Walton, who, I mean, obviously we know his pedigree. It was special. I watched the game. I was confused. I was like, they're gonna just keep letting him score, and he ends up getting almost 50 points. So it's a good start to his campaign for preseason player of the year, All-American. He did what he needed to do, got his team a win. They didn't have Pop Isaacs as well, which they're going to need him. They're a little thin in the backcourt. So for him to come there and score almost 50 and kind of hold it down, he looked good tonight.
Mike, I know that wouldn't have necessarily been, your assignment, right, if you were in this game. But just watching that continue to happen, like if you're on the other side of it, you just kind of tip your cap and, hope he misses at some point.
Well, John touched on it a little bit. When you're watching the game, it looked like that was almost the game plan. They're like, if Kalkbrenner wants 50 tonight, Kalkbrenner gets 50, but we're going to try to shut off Miller and some of these other guys. And they were, partly successful with that. They hung around in this game. It was 85-80 at one point until Creighton kind of pulled away there at the end. And it's interesting, right? Like Kalkbrenner probably doesn't get to 49 and 20 for 22 if it isn't close. Right, like I think we were talking before this, right? If you said Kalkbrenner at 49, you wouldn't guess it would be this close. It actually probably would be this close because if they blew this game open earlier, he wouldn't have been in the game to get to 49. So yeah. I mean, I love when some of these mid majors and low majors come in and just want to junk things up, want to just do things their own way, and I thought that's what Rio Grande did tonight. And I know it didn't result in a win, but you at least fought. They fought hard, and it was close enough at the end.
Absolutely, yeah. Fantastic debut for him. Still in college and still dominating is Kalkbrenner. And then the last game of the night that we're going to touch on here in the first segment is Rutgers. Now, we were anticipating, obviously, two debuts for freshmen Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. Only got Dylan tonight. Ace Bailey out with an injury that is considered day-to-day. But look, this number came down after that announcement, and Rutgers won this game pretty much no problem after the first 7 minutes. Final score 75-52, led by Dylan Harper, the freshman with 20. Matt, what'd you like about what you saw from Rutgers tonight?
Well, I think they are who they've been, right? They hang their hat on the defensive end of the floor. They held Wagner to 19 points in the first half of the game. I mean, for Harper to go in there in his first collegiate game, he goes for 20 points, 9 for 14 from the field. I think it's super impressive. And, Ace Bailey gets scratched this morning, and to be able to respond and go out there and play the way they did. I mean, look, Wagner was an NCAA tournament team last year. They won the play-in game, I guess you could say, in Dayton, Ohio, and then they go on to lose to Carolina in the first round. But, Wagner's a good program, and Rutgers just completely took care of business, and to hold that team to 19 points, in the first half, 52 for the game, just shows you, hey, even with this added talent, even with these freshmen that we're bringing in, one of the best classes in the entire country, look, we're still a defensive-minded, defensive-focused team, and they proved that in the first half of this game.
John, 20 points on 9 of 14 shooting for Dylan. How high are you on him as a prospect and just the impact he'll be able to make for Rutgers this year?
Yeah, I'm super high. I kind of, when I watch the game, he looks different. He moves different. He's just at a different speed, a different pace. He looks like a pro. The last guy that I can kind of remember off the top of my head that I thought like was Nick Smith Jr. out of Arkansas, just look different out there. So it's almost like the young guys have infused a little energy. They were smiling, they were laughing, they were defending. They look like a cohesive unit, man, which, I watch that a lot with teams. Hey, when they're coming in the huddle, are you guys a unit? Is someone having to yell to someone to come to the huddle? Are we smiling? Is there good energy? And Rutgers has all of that. I think they're going to ascend up in the rankings. They look really good. They've got a lot of stuff, especially off the bench. They got guys off the bench. This is going to be a fun year for them, especially when Ace Bailey gets back. That's only going to add to the intrigue. I loved how they looked tonight against a very good Wagner team. They kind of just wore them down, man. They kind of just walked them down, and Wagner kind of just had to relent.
Mike, if and when Ace Bailey returns to that lineup, I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, how high is this ceiling? Obviously college basketball is trending old. I do think that trend will stop after this year when all the COVID years run out. But, can a team that's led by 2 freshmen, which they will be, I mean, can they make a run?
I mean, I did see the St. John's exhibition, and I think this team still has a lot of work to do. And I think on top of that, tonight, they obviously didn't have Ace Bailey. And when you add Ace Bailey back, that's not just adding another cook into the kitchen. That is adding a massive cook into the kitchen. And so what that means for Jeremiah Williams, what that means for Jordan Derkak and their opportunities, the shots they get, what they do defensively, like it all changes when you bring a guy like that back in. And I think it's on Rutgers to try to figure out a way. It's on Ace Bailey to try to figure out a way to not necessarily like blend in, but he has to find ways to have a better shot profile. That was the tough part about the game against St. John's. Like he takes really tough shots. And tonight, the thing for me outside of Dylan Harper, I thought he was tremendous. It was what they were going to do at the 5 position. Because Ogbole, like, I don't think he's ready. And Somerville being able to come in tonight and give you that type of production, give you 11 points, 8 rebounds, face-up game, crafty finishes around the rim. I thought he was tough defensively. That's a really key emergence for this team, and they needed that because that was a question mark that I had coming into the season.
3 other top 25 teams were in action tonight, including the Revenge Tour getting underway for John Calipari. We'll get into that and more on the other side. You're watching Field of 68 After Dark.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today. Would you be surprised to find out that the Field of 68 is home to more than 35 podcasts? More than 25 team-specific podcasts that are hosted by the people that know what fans want the most. The Goodman and Humble podcast, the DTF podcast, the A10 Insider podcast, and the Mountain West podcast. But wait, there's even more. The Field of 68 will be launching the ACC Insider podcast this year. Subscribe to this channel and come along for the ride.
After dark, this is like the first sort of 10 toes down episode of the season. We had Monday from Sioux Falls, but obviously this is what you guys have come to know and love with After Dark. I'm John Martin, joined tonight. We're going four wide. John Henson, Matt McCall, Mike LaTulip. We mentioned it before the break. This was the much anticipated debut of John Calipari. He's got that red suit on now. He's got that red suit jacket in Fayetteville, Matt, and look, that was a good Lipscomb team. That was a good Lipscomb team that they got in there in Fayetteville tonight. I mean, it kind of got a little dicey there at the beginning, but they just obviously out-athleted them in the end, get the final 76-60. What do you think this year is going to be like for John Calipari, Matt?
I mean, I think it's going to be the same, right? They're going to find a way to win 25 games somehow, some way, and it's going to be what's going to happen in the NCAA tournament. I think that's been the question mark the last several years at Kentucky. That's going to be the question mark this year at Arkansas. He's got the talent. I mean, John L. Davis is one of the best transfers in the entire country. What he was doing at FAU, he was like the one guy last year with all the expectations that FAU was dealing with that he didn't seem to flinch, and he brought it every single night. He goes for 15 tonight. They're going to be right there. They're going to be right there in the hunt for an SEC title, even though I think that Alabama and Auburn, and when you watch what Auburn did tonight, they're in a class of their own. But Arkansas is going to be right there, and they're going to win 25, 26 games, and it's going to come down for Cal. What are they going to do in the tournament? Are they going to bow out in the first or second round? Can they get to a second weekend? They have the talent to do it. It's great to see when you see players like DJ Wagner, or, whoever it may be that transfer. They kind of need a fresh start. And Wagner didn't have his best game, 7 points tonight, but that fresh start for him, maybe he needed to get away from BBN as well. So this team, they're going to win a boatload of games. It's all going to come down to what do they do come March once the tournament starts.
Yeah, Mike, I really, really want to like this Arkansas team a lot. I want to like them a lot because there's so many connections with like guys that Cal coached at Memphis that I grew up watching, like the son of Wani and Fierro and Billy Richmond. But I watched the full game tonight, and I came away very concerned. That they don't have shooting. They don't have any shooting. Boogie Flan is basically the only guy, and he got good looks, and he'll continue to get good looks, but everybody else is just a zero, it feels like, from that standpoint. Do you share that sentiment? I saw you sort of shaking your head, nodding. Can you find it? Like, what's your assessment of their offense?
Yeah, I watched the way Lipscomb guarded them tonight. They said, we're going to pack the paint. We're going to shut off all gaps. You got to shoot over us. And whatever they end up being 4 for 23 from 3 or whatever it ended up finishing at, that's going to be what they fight this year. In addition to, what Matt's saying, getting to that 25 win mark, getting to the NCAA tournament, winning in the NCAA tournament, there's so much role allocation that has to happen before they can get to that point. Because I think what you're going to run into is there's potential with this team for guys, I think, to fight their roles because there's so many guys that are capable of doing really great things. I mean, you look at Nelly Davis and Boogie Flan, like DJ Wagner, there's plenty of guys that have the talent to be what you would call like the guy. But if you have 4 guys that think they're the guy, that's when you run into issues. And so that's what I think they're going to fight early on. There were some things defensively. They switched 1 through 5 tonight with Ivasic, and that got a little disjointed. We'll talk about Baylor later. That's another point that I definitely want to hit on. But yeah, I mean, it's how they're going to buy in, mesh. And the one thing with Cal is, and this is just as someone that's not tied to the program, I'm not in and around that program, but you look back at like 2014, getting Devin Booker to come off the bench. right, and buy into his role. Karl Anthony Towns, hey man, you're gonna be 10-7 this year, and you know what, we're gonna go and try to go win a national championship. And even last year, right, you have 2 top 10 picks that come off the bench essentially, and he finds ways to get guys to buy in. Can he do that again this year? Because if he does, now you're going to be looking at what Matt's talking about. Get into that 25 win mark, getting the NCAA tournament, and seeing how far you can go.
John, let me follow up on that real quick too. Like the consistency, because Mike just made a great point on just the pick and roll defense and switching 1 through 5. Last year, when you watched Cal's teams play at Kentucky, what's the consistency on how they're guarding ball screens? You would see them hedge sometimes. You would see them drop sometimes. You would see them ice sometimes. Like finding that level of consistency for this team. If you're going to switch 1 through 5, switch 1 through 5 and do it every single game. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to hang our hat on, and this is what we're going to be really, really good at. Or, you know what, we're going to be an ice team. This is what we're going to be really, really good at. Or in the middle of the floor, we're going to force everything to the ball handler's left hand. Like that level of consistency. Whatever you're going to do it. I thought that's like last year when you watched Kentucky play, especially on the defensive end of the floors. How are they guarding ball screens? They guarded them a multitude of ways, and that lack of consistency ended up hurting them on the defensive end of the floor.
Matt, would you agree that new team, right? Like thinking like coaching hat, right? New team, trying to get guys all meshed together. In my personal opinion, right? Switching 1 through 5, even things off the ball, obviously ball screens, that's difficult for a new team, a team that hasn't meshed. Like, would you agree, like out of all the schemes that you could throw together, that's one of the toughest ones, I think, to try to like get substance from early on?
I also think it's a bit of a bailout, and I think it gives guys an excuse to be lazy.
Yep.
Like I really believe that, Mike. And John can touch on this because you'll see guys in the NBA, you'll see teams in the NBA that switch 1 through 5, and it's almost a way to protect their superstars because it's an easy way to be lazy. I don't have to work as hard. If I got to run out here and I got to ice this ball screen and it's a throw ahead pick and roll, so I'm guarding the guy in the middle of the floor and he takes it and throws it to a wing, and now I got to sprint myself all the way over there to the wing and ice this ball screen, that's hard to do. But if I switch it, you know what? I don't have to work as hard. So I think switching sometimes is a bailout for guys to not play as hard. I think that's more of that. I'd like to hear from John's standpoint, just because there's a lot of switching that goes on, especially in the NBA at the next level. But I think sometimes in the NBA, it's a way to protect the superstars.
Yeah, switching is schemed up, right? Before the game, hey, 1 through 3, John, you're switching with 3 when this guy's in. It's not a thing that we just do all the time, because the worst defensive teams are the teams that switch all the time. And even with Arkansas, I'm going to go off the court. We've dissected them on the court. Stands weren't filled. The crowd was sitting down. There was no energy in the building. Yeah. Do you guys realize, like, the Arkansas fans,
which is not like that. That's not that's not that. It's normally not like that.
It was weird. It was weird just seeing the low energy when you just paid. Walmart just gave their life trust to John Calipari, and you got the highest NIL. Like, I was a little upset about that. And then, you know, with Arkansas on the court, you know, I'll keep it short and sweet. I hate their offensive creativity. You can't just throw the ball to guys and hope they bail you out. It works. Like Coach McCall said, it'll get you 25 wins, but I don't think it's going to get you to the promised land unless you have the generational talents and the John Walls and the Boogies and the ADs and the Devin Bookers and Carl Towns. You don't have that on that team. So you're going to need a little more offensive creativity. And then when I talked about how Rutgers looked like a cohesive unit, Arkansas didn't look like a cohesive unit. And we touched on that as well, like who's the guy. You know, there was a specific instance where DJ Wagner was like begging guys to get into the free throw huddle to come together. And to me, when I played, that's a sign of a little bit of distance and a little bit of kind of, you know, I don't know, just not together. And so I'm concerned about Arkansas. I just watching from the crowd standpoint and on the court, this thing could get ugly fast. As a betting man, my God, John, can't wait to fade them when some adversity hits.
Bro, it's crazy. I had the same thought, bro. I swear I told somebody that. because
I can't
they
wait till
almost
go
covered,
to
right?
the
They
environment.
almost covered.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, we're gonna.
yeah, man. We're gonna have that on the radar. There's no question about it.
Right.
Well, you mentioned offensive creativity. One SEC team that certainly had that tonight was Bruce Pearl and the Auburn Tigers, 94-43. This is a Vermont team, by the way, that just went into Birmingham and knocked off the preseason AAC favorite. Okay, at 6.5-point underdog. So this Vermont team, as we know, is consistently in the tournament conversation and consistently respectable, Mike, and they managed to score 43 tonight with Auburn, I believe, shooting 45% from three. It was just a party down there. Is this sort of the high range, the ceiling for Auburn? I mean, can they do this? You know, can they be expected to do this? Maybe not hold a team to 43, but just from the offensive standpoint, you know, can they have more nights like this?
I was going to say, do this every night? Probably not, but I think you see what they're capable of, and that's why we talk about them being in like that upper class of the SEC and being up there and maybe really challenging Alabama for the title in this league. And you know, tonight you touched on it. Vermont just knocked off a really, really good UAB team, and I thought Auburn early on in this game, their energy, their bite defensively, turning defense into offense. I mean, that's really what got them started. And credit them because they didn't get their foot off the gas at all. You know, they stepped on their necks and ended that thing early and didn't look back. So really impressive start. You know, they're a team that I think obviously had high expectations coming into this year, and they're showing here early on that, you know, they're going to be a force. They're going to be a force in the SEC without question.
Yeah, you know, Matt, it just sort of feels like, you know, the fact that Auburn and Arkansas are only separated by 5 spots, right, in the polls. That's just not reality. I know that's not where the analytics have them, but it just kind of feels like Auburn is much more of a test, you know, for the top of the SEC than you know, Arkansas or somebody like that, you know, going at Alabama. It feels like they'll definitely have a say, you know, against Alabama for that title and that crown.
Listen, I mean, we're talking about Auburn and Alabama, and we're not talking about football here.
Yeah,
that's normally what we're talking about at this time of year. That's what everybody's talking. You turn on Sirius XM, nobody's talking hoops right now. We're the only show that's talking hoops right now. So let's
right.
give us some credit because we're talking
That's
some
right.
hoops. These two teams in the state of Alabama are absolutely outstanding. No question about it. I mean, Auburn made 16 threes today. And we talk about Vermont. Look, do you know what John Becker has done at Vermont since he's been there? There's only been 1 year that he hasn't gotten to 20 wins. Only one, and that was the COVID year. Every other year, you look at what this guy has done. They go to the NCAA tournament almost every single year. I mean, they are the cream of the crop up in New England in terms of basketball. John Becker's a heck of a coach, and Bruce Pearl had his team fired up and ready to play in this game. And they are, to me, Alabama is 1A, but Auburn is 1B. When you get Johnny back, who's one of the best front court players in the entire country, to get him to come back to this team is terrific. And I've been saying it, you know, a guy like J.P. Pegues, who's a smaller guard who can really fill it up from behind a three-point line from a transfer standpoint. You know, he makes 2 threes tonight. He was 3 for 3 from the field, only played 19 minutes, didn't have to play a ton of minutes. But Bruce Pearl's best teams have always had a guard who somehow ends up being a little bit undersized that can fill it up from behind a three-point line. I watched it firsthand when I was at the University of Florida when he had Chris Lofton and what he was able to do with that guy at Tennessee who just seemed to never miss. But this Auburn team, man, they are for real. And Bruce Pearl, what he's created there, creating the jungle. I mean, you used to be able to go in there and just get a win. You used to be able to go and win because there was no environment at Auburn. If you saw Auburn on the schedule and you got to play them on the road, you can chalk that one up. We can go get that one because we know it's not going to be a difficult environment to play in. Not anymore. Not what this guy's doing, man.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. One thing about Auburn, this is what they're going to do. They're going to jump on your ass, and you better be able to take that hit, or you're going to get beat by 30. And so that's kind of how they play. And Vermont was hanging tough, and then they jumped on them, and Vermont could not take that hit. If you can take the hit from Auburn, you can definitely be in the game. But when they're bearing down defensively, they're running and gunning and attacking you relentlessly. there's not much you can do, and this might be his best team in doing that he's ever had. So that was a fun game to watch. I love the way they play. I love the energy they play with. I love Blues Pearl as a coach as well. So the sky's the limit for them, man. They're going to have a good year.
Yeah, good start certainly for the Tigers. And then we got the two-time reigning champs kicking off their season against Sacred Heart. I guess it was a little interesting there in the first 12 minutes of the game, and then it stopped being interesting. 92-56 was the final. UConn covers all numbers for those that might matter to. Alex Caravan finishes with 20. Mike, this is a totally, in many ways. There we go. Somebody's happy today. Somebody had the husky. Somebody had the dog.
Oh, he's got his Scully.
Hey,
The BetMGM. Shout out, Rob.
I still haven't got reimbursed for my Vegas bet. It's all good. I want some money. I'm not tripping, but you know what I'm saying. If you're listening to BetMGM, I'll take my voucher in any way possible. Thank you.
Was Rob at the game? Was he in stores? Was Dowser at the game? Did he make it to stores in between all of his commercials that he has to record?
I hope not, because if he did,
I thought he checked in at the end.
Yeah, you might have.
He may have.
Rob
He may have.
I'm just a little too excited for you.
Who's
I
getting
don't know.
MGM gear around here, and what we have to do to get that? That's definitely going to be. I'm going to report that to HR as well. I'm going to add that to my long list.
This is Christmas episode. I'm putting the BetMGM beanie on with the Santa Claus. I'm giving you some rocks.
But Mike, this is obviously a retool for UConn because you lose Cam Spencer, you lose Donovan Clingan, you lose Tristan Newton. We know that this team certainly reloaded and still kept some relevant contributors and some good pieces from a year ago for sure. But when you lose so much, I think it's fair to wonder, how quickly can you get it back? And look, it's Sacred Heart. I don't want to overreach here, but what did you just see from the Huskies tonight? In terms of all of that.
Yeah, I think it looks different than it did last year, but there's still some remnants, right? I think the calling card offensively for UConn last year is, just a lot of player movement, a lot of ball movement, and you saw a lot of the same tonight. I think, their offense reminds me a lot of the Miami Heat in a way where there's just kind of like an equal opportunity to it, and everybody can get involved. McNeely can get involved. Caravan can get involved. DR can come off the bench. Ball can do his thing. Like there's just everybody touches it. Everybody can move it. You got guys that can dribble, pass, and shoot all over the floor. Like that's how a guy like Caravan is able to get the catch and shoot opportunities he gets, get the 7 assists that he gets, because that means the ball's moving. Because like Alex Caravan isn't a guy that's initiating offense, right? But for him to get 7 assists tonight, that's pretty indicative of that. But for them, like I look at the defensive end because Clingan was the ultimate eraser, right? The ultimate anchor. I truly think like he was one of the best, defenders and rim protectors that we had probably seen in the last, 10, 15 years. I mean, he was that good and that much of a deterrent. And then you have Cam Spencer, Tristan Newton, Steph Castle, like all these guys who are really good on the perimeter. This year, you don't necessarily have that anchor. I mean, Samson Johnson's great. Terrace Reed's great. But the margin for error is going to be smaller for these guys on the perimeter when it comes to protecting the paint. Like they're still going to have to guard out there on the perimeter like those guys did last year. And then, I don't think they're at, they're in the conversation for that top tier for sure. But I think they have a little bit more of a ways to go to find out kind of who they are compared to maybe like an Alabama and some of these other teams that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
thank God the Big East is sketchy right now, so they'll be all right.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, the bar is so damn high for them every single year now. Yeah. They do seem to keep clearing it. I mean, I keep waiting on them to not do it, and they just keep doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, Hurley, they're up 30. They're up 30 in a timeout in the second half, and he's going out there and firing the crowd up and beating his chest. Up 30.
Right.
Against Sacred Heart. It is. Look, he's going to will this team we talked about it with Arkansas to 25, 26 wins. He's going to will this team to believe. I don't care who they're playing. I mean, let's talk about the freshmen tonight. I mean, talk about your debut. I mean, we anoint Cooper Flagg, and rightfully so, and how good he is. But this guy goes out in his first college game and gets 18 and 10. On the back-to-back national championship team and Liam McNeely. I mean, hey man, this dude. I know he's a McDonald's All-American, but this guy is for real. For real,
he's a pro.
And so,
well, think about fit.
You just
think about fit.
The culture of no doubt, and the culture of the team. I mean, they're up, whatever it is, late in the game, and everybody on the bench. It didn't matter if someone dove on the floor for a loose ball. Everybody's upstanding. That's what Danny Hurley has created. That's culture. Like, you hear all these coaches that go into their press conferences when they get a job, and the word culture gets thrown around so much. But when you see it, it's not just words on a wall. It's everybody within the program and holding everybody within the program to a certain standard. That's what's going on at that place. So I don't care who's on that roster. They're going to be in the hunt, and they're going to be in the fight.
Yeah, John, just real quick before we get out of here on this last topic, how infectious is it just as a player, to see when your coach is doing 30? Like,
I absolutely love watching them, the offensive, their schemes, how they play, the energy. It's like basketball, like porn, bro, watching them, bro. It's amazing. So I have nothing else to say. I love watching them. It's amazing.
Yeah. All right. I get it.
Maybe we should go to break on that.
That's a new Ross team.
It's after dark. It's after dark.
Need to, yeah, that's right. It is after dark. Yep. Need to marinate on that one for sure. Monday, we had some absolutely big games as well, with some maybe telling results, some early indications about some teams on Monday, which we'll touch on and more when we get back. You're watching Field of 68 After Dark.
There's no sport in America that is more difficult to follow than college basketball. It can be overwhelming. That's where the Field of 68 Daily comes into play. The Daily is your go-to source for injury updates, recruiting news, and transfer portal additions that actually matter. For just $50 a year, get access to the same information that your favorite team's coaching staff is subscribed for. Quality content can be hard to find in the college basketball space. The Daily is here to help you with that.
Welcome back to Field of 68 After Dark. Make sure you like and subscribe on that YouTube channel if you have not. Obviously, we're going to be here most nights throughout the college basketball season. I'm John Martin, joined tonight by John Henson, Matt McCall, Mike LaTulip. We've talked about tonight's slate, which was relatively light, but we have not yet touched on what went down on Monday. And one of the early front runners for win of the season, Gonzaga, and what they did to Baylor. I give Baylor credit, Matt. I give Baylor credit for playing this game and going out there, but that was an absolute ass whooping. From the beginning of the game, Baylor could not match the size of Gonzaga. They did not have an answer for the passing ability of the big man, and they were just getting every single shot they wanted. So, again, Matt, I started with a compliment. I said I give Baylor credit for playing the game, but could Gonzaga have been any more dominant than they were in that game against Baylor?
Yeah, and I think we have to make mention of Mark Few's son getting dunked on at the end of that game too, right?
We're not starting with that, man. We're not starting with that.
That was we're not starting with that. Okay.
Listen, if you want to,
I give the man credit for putting his body in the play. I got to give him credit. Look, I was shocked by the result, just the margin of victory. You look at the numbers. At the end of the day, Baylor can't make a shot from behind a 3-point line. They go 3 for 21 from 3. Gonzaga goes 13 for 31. That's the difference in the game. Jaden Nunn really struggled. If you're a Baylor fan, he's the guy that you wanted to see make the jump with everything that they lost, with all the guys that they lost to go to the NBA last year. He's the guy that you want to see, okay, he's been in the program. He's been with us now. He knows our culture. He knows the style of play. He knows how we're playing. He's got to make a jump. He struggled in the game. I mean, only 11 assists. The ball movement has to be way better. It was just – you mentioned it, John. I mean, give Scott Drew credit for playing the game, especially early in the year, which a lot of coaches aren't doing. I mean, you look at the slate of games. I mean, coaches are playing guaranteed games at home in their first game of the season. Yeah. And for Baylor to go out there and play this game, but we need games like that, especially to start college basketball, because all anyone's talking about right now is the college football playoff and what the rankings are and who's playing who come December. Yep. We need more games like this to create more buzz around our game. And I think that, the Field of 68 tip-off in Sioux Falls is a way to do that. But these games, these home and homes, and let's not make them at 11 o'clock at night where we got to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, this is not the presidential election. We don't want to have to do that. We want to be able to watch college basketball on the first day of college basketball at 7 o'clock and have good opponents and good games. So I give Baylor credit, but they got to play better. And Jaden Nunn, to me, is a guy that needs to play better for this team.
John, I want to get your thoughts here. I was blown away, and I found myself projecting over the course of a season, how is anybody going to deal with Greg, with Huff, with EK? Because, the game's kind of getting a little close there in the second half. I think Baylor cuts to 13. EK's on the bench. He comes right back in. I think he scores the next 2 out of 3 possessions, and it's like it never even happened. How is anybody going to deal with that rotation of bigs in college basketball this season?
It's going to be tough. I mean, they have 84% of last year's minutes, which is the 5th highest in the country, and they're a top-tier team. So I kind of figured Baylor was in trouble. Baylor's got to figure it out. On paper, their roster is a lot more talented than the final score indicated. But, they got the number 6 recruiting class. But that takes time, man. I think in college basketball with this new era of getting guys involved, I mean, there's no way you can just come in with 7 or 8 new guys and it'd be gel and be a well-oiled machine. It just doesn't work like that. So I think Baylor's better than they showed. But Gonzaga, they had 42 points off the bench. I mean, they look like they're ready, day one ready, and they're only going to get better. So it's going to be interesting to see a top 5 team kind of returning 90-ish% of their minutes. What do they do in a tournament? Because I think continuity is lost, man. I think there's something that needs to be more of that in college basketball. And Baylor got a good lesson in retaining players a couple nights ago. They got 2 All-ACC players as well, and North Chad and Jeremy Roach. So I think Baylor will be fine, but Gonzaga showed them what continuity and talent does, and it was ugly.
Yeah, I mean, I know it seems crazy talking to Mike to say this about a number 6 team, but I mean, it just feels like that's just too low. I mean, you may have a different opinion, but I just felt like I don't think there are 4 teams that are better than this Gonzaga team in college basketball.
No, they're up there for sure. I think they're pretty firmly, for me. Like I would honestly, I'd put them over Kansas right now. Like I think it's Alabama. I think UConn's in that conversation, obviously. And I think Gonzaga's right there too. I think, Kansas obviously has things to figure out, but look, Gonzaga, John, you touched on it, right? That's a well-oiled machine when you return that type of continuity. And now I do think that Baylor aided them a little bit. And I'll go back to what we talked about with Arkansas. I don't know in what world with that personnel, you're switching not only 1 through 5 ball screens, you're switching everything off the ball. So now this was the problem, and this is why Gonzaga got off to such a good start, was you're switching 1 through 5, every single thing. So now Gonzaga's face cutting you, they're slipping out, they're getting shots like Matt, you talked about the 3-point shooting for Gonzaga. They shot 70% from inside the arc. And part of that was because you have Omier, you have Ojanwanu, and half the time they're finishing possessions on the perimeter because they switched. And then you got Jeremy Roach at 6'2", and you got Robert Wright at 6'1" or 6 foot having to deal with bigs down low, and that's why Gonzaga gets 16 offensive rebounds, gets it back on the glass. And I mean, obviously give Mark Few and Gonzaga a ton of credit. I think give Stephen Gentry a lot of credit, the assistant for Gonzaga, who I think is just probably one of the more underrated offensive tacticians in college basketball. Like they took it to him, and it was just they got anything they wanted defensively. And then offensively for Baylor, super disjointed. It just kind of felt like it was resorting to, hey, just put your head down, try to go get one. And you play against a team like that, like we talked about, with that type of continuity, it can get out of hand quickly. So it's good that Baylor, I think, learned the lesson now compared to learning it, in the first week of December. That's why you schedule tough. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think Scott Drew can work with after that type of film.
Yeah, Zags looked absolutely lethal. It was also coming out party on Monday for the freshmen at Duke, I mean, it ain't just the Cooper Flag show. I know that's what the casuals are going to say. The casuals are just going to say this is the Cooper Flag show at Duke. But we know better than that, don't we, Matt McCall? It might be the Con Knipple show. I mean, seriously.
I thought you were going to go to Henson. You're not going to go to Henson on the Duke stuff? You're not going to go to Henson on this?
You don't
want to throw it to him? You don't want to go to him just to get his take on the Dukies?
It is the Con Knipple show. Cooper Flag had to settle in. But you've heard rumblings. Every player, every coach you asked around there said he's the guy that most impressed him this summer. So it's translating. Duke looks really good, really talented, really deep. They'll probably have some growing pains with a young kind of core, but I mean, you can't ask for more. Cooper Flag is playing within himself. He's playing within the team concept. He's passing the ball. He's defending, which we knew that's what he would do. Duke looks really formidable, especially early in the season. I think they're going to get better as well, especially with the two freshmen kind of at the forefront, kind of head of the snake.
That was very classy. That was a very classy breakdown from you on Duke, I thought.
You know what I'm saying? I call it how I see it. Duke looks good. I don't mean they're not going to get whooped.
But on this line too, Henson, like on the same line, and we talked about Kyle Neptune earlier. It's impressive what John Shire's doing. It's impressive. And has he won a national championship or gone to taken over for arguably the greatest college basketball coach of all time, and those expectations that are on him every single day, that it's impressive.
When you could get Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum to FaceTime the kids and say, "Hey, what's up? How you doing, bro?" Like, yeah, it's a little easier. Like, come on now. Like, John Shire's doing a great job. Yeah. Don't get it twisted. Yeah. But the previous players and
hold up now, Henson. Hold on. When all you got to do at Carolina is walk in the arena and look up in the rafters, and you see MJ. Like, are you kidding me? Come on, man. Wow. Get MJ involved.
MJ's not recruiting. I'm going to tell you right. MJ's on the beach in San Tropez, or he's doing a fishing tournament down there and fishing for marlins in Jupiter. He's not calling recruits.
He's playing golf about 15 miles from my house. That's where he's at.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Duke's got it rolling in the recruiting trail, and from an NBA standpoint, from a success standpoint, from a draft pick standpoint, they have the formula. Can't fight it. So got to call it how you see it, man. I'm not a Duke. My sister went to Duke. She was a Duke women's basketball player. Shout out Duke women's basketball. Love you guys, but that's about it.
I don't think I knew that. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, my sister in 4 years, Duke. I used to go to the game with the hoodie on. Didn't work. I was 7 feet tall, but I used to go to Cameron all the time and watch her play. So
every year I find out something new.
Hold on. We just got a text message too from our colleague. Why aren't you FaceTiming recruits? Come on, man.
They're gonna be like 2 times. I'm boring. Hey, listen. Let me tell you something. My claim to fame is Roy said I was his best defensive player he's ever had. Think about that. I need to put that on the wall somewhere. Can we get a banner? That's Trevor. Can we get a banner? Roy said I was the best defensive player he ever had. That's what I hang my hat on.
I mean, you played with Giannis, bro. People will remember you. You played with Giannis. Like that's a big selling.
They don't listen, man. They don't tell me to call anyone. I didn't get the jump man box, man. I gotta talk to T Hands. We'll see, man.
Yeah. Mike, just in terms of that duo there, I know it's not just them. They have some other quality players there, but obviously those are going to be the stars. Hard to ask for better in terms of a debut. Are you with John in that this Duke team's only going to mature and get better over the course of the season?
Yeah, young team. That's just it's natural. They're going to continue to progress. I think, I'm ready for Twitter X trolls in the middle of the season to just be like screenshotting box scores and trying to diminish what Cooper Flagg does because he's going to have games where he has like 12 and 7, and they're going to be like, "Hey, is this a number one pick?" You got to watch what he's doing, man. What he does defensively, how active he is, his ability to pass, his footwork, all that stuff. Like that's what makes him a number one pick. That full package. It's not going to be counting stats for him. And Knippel's gonna feast all year, I think, because I think he's going to be the beneficiary to the attention that I think Flagg's going to get. And they've done what Duke does over the years. Like it's Jack White, it's all these guys, these kind of secondary guys that are really good role guys. Mason Gillis is a guy that we saw at Purdue over the years that is just a knockdown shooter and is going to be able to space the floor. There's a lot to like with these guys, and I think they're only scratching the surface, and it's going to be fun to follow. Not only just because of Cooper Flagg, but Knippel, and see like if he can be consistent. If he ends up being like a 17 a game guy, 18 a game guy, like you're going to start talking about where he ends up being in the draft. Because I think over the last month or 2 months, like he's been a guy that's been kind of skyrocketing up some of those draft boards as well.
Yeah, those weren't the only notable games on Monday. There were a couple of coaches that made their debuts at new stops at Kentucky and at Louisville. They're in the Commonwealth, so we'll touch on that. Get some thoughts from the guys when we get back. You're watching Field of 68 After Dark. Back after this.
Now that the college basketball season is in full swing, you need to make sure that you have access to the best betting tool on the market, the Rhythm app. Spelled RITHMN, is a data-backed app that uses AI and analytics to identify inefficiencies in betting lines and the player prop market that will allow you, the user, to profit. You can create customized, analytics-driven betting models tailored to your personal preferences as a bettor. Users have access to up-to-the-second against-the-spread data. And if you're like me and you understand pictures better than numbers on a screen, Rhythm's internal trend analysis provides you with the kind of graphs that will allow you to evaluate past results and project future performance in a visual way. Every Division I college basketball team is included in the Rhythm's metrics. Free subscribers to the Field of 68 Daily will get 25% off for a Rhythm subscription. Use the QR code on the screen to sign up or download at the link in the description.
Welcome back, Field of 68 After Dark here on a Wednesday. John Martin, John Henson, Matt McCall, Mike LaTulip here with you for just a little bit longer. One more Monday result that we're going to touch on here, just in terms of the from the team standpoint. Ohio State beats Texas in the first game of the season. Now, has to be said, Mike, no Tremont Mark in this one for Texas, which, I definitely am going to say that's a pretty massive loss. But, it felt like that was I guess there's two sides of this, right? There's the Texas side, there's the Ohio State side. I'll focus on the Ohio State side first. It just felt like for, the new coach who's trying to sort of validate himself and validate the school's decision to give him the job, it felt like that was an amazing step forward, to that goal.
Yeah, I mean, it feels kind of full circle after we started with Neptune at the top of the show, and now we got a matchup between guys that, had to take the reins at their respective programs. And look, I think it's going to be tough, right? Like what Matt said earlier, you're just acknowledging that it's hard taking over these programs, two programs that I think have pretty high expectations. And when you watch this game, I saw an Ohio State team. I mean, they hit 6 threes in the first 7 minutes of the game, and really, I don't think it was much that Texas was doing wrong defensively. It was just these were guys that were confident in stepping into open looks. And look, Bruce Thornton, Micah Parrish, Mobley was great. Michi Johnson, I think was okay. That's really going to be the story for this team this year. How far those guys can take them. The front court, I think it will kind of bear itself out as the season goes on. But look, November's never been the issue with Ohio State. They beat Alabama last year in November down in Destin. Like, this has never been the issue with them. It's when you get to January, right? It's when you get punched in the mouth in Big Ten play and you go and you lose 11-13, right? Like, the question for Jake Diebler is, can you avoid those skids this year? The question for Bruce Thornton is, as a third-year guy, can you lead the team as the point guard and not let this car go off the road, right? This is the result isn't surprising because we've seen Ohio State do this over the years, no matter who the coach is, right? Because they did this with Holtman, and now, like, is it different with Diebler? That's the question, and I think Monday night was a great step forward.
Yeah, Matt. Obviously, a tough loss for Texas and Ronnie Terry, but there is a little solace, which is Trey Johnson going off 29 points, 10 of 20 from the field, 5 of 10 from three. Everybody was talking about Trey Johnson on Monday night. So you can imagine a world, right, where Tremont Mark gets back, Trey's going to continue to get better, where, by January or February, maybe, this is a forgotten memory for the Longhorns.
Yeah, it's early. I mean, there's still so much time, but this league, they're coming into the SEC, and I know we're going to touch on Kentucky here. They looked outstanding in the first game of the season. What Alabama, Auburn, what they're doing. I thought Florida was really good against South Florida. I thought the first half for the Florida Gators the other night, the spacing wasn't great on offense, but they figured it out in the second half and playing against a South Florida team that was playing inspired. So we'll see where this Texas team stacks up against these other teams in the SEC. And we talked about it earlier. Right now, it looks like Alabama and Auburn are in a class of their own, but we're going to see what's going to happen here with Kentucky, who looked great on night one, the spacing, the three-point shooting. You want to talk about an environment, BBN's always going to show up, no matter who they're playing against. So we'll see how Texas fares in the SEC, but it's early. It's early. They got to get healthy, and once they do, we'll see what this team looks like.
Yeah, John, you sounded like this Trey Johnson. This Trey Johnson seems like a guy that you're excited about.
Yeah, Texas is. I'm essentially from Austin, so Texas has always been kind of a school.
How many damn hometowns you got, man? How many? Because you told me last year it was Memphis,
Miami. What are we playing?
Did you say essentially?
Guys, I was 14. What do you want me to do? Ask my dad. Why he was moving me all over the place? I have nothing to do with it. I was in Memphis. I was in Austin. I was in Tampa. I was putting the back of the car. They said, "Come with us." So I don't know what you want me to tell you.
We'll allow it. We'll allow it.
Yeah, like I was like got the moving truck myself. Like, nah, like I was following my dad. But I like Trey Johnson. I like what he did. He looks like an elite scorer. He's one of those guys that when I was watching play, I had to like look on the mock drafts, like he might be a little too low. So Ohio State just they had the guards. They were healthy. They just looked better. They looked like a better team. And even Aaron Bradshaw, who's a former top 5 recruit, he's serviceable, man. He's more than serviceable down there. So Ohio State, as Mike alluded to, man, we got to see what they're going to do later on the season. Are they going to sustain this and be a force to be reckoned with, or are they going to fall off again? So we'll see.
Yeah, all eyes certainly also on the state of Kentucky, who have new head coaches, both programs, Pat Kelsey at Louisville and Mark Pope at Kentucky, and similar debuts, Mike, in terms of, first crack, first chance to show the fans what it's going to look like, and dominant wins for both Kentucky and for Louisville. Are both these teams going to have good seasons? Is Louisville going to trail off? I mean, what do you sort of forecast for both these teams with their new coaches?
Yeah, I think there's Louisville in particular. The energy feels restored there, at least in the early, and that's Pat Kelsey's staple, right? Like, he's going to bring energy, he's going to rally the troops. You could see just right off the rip, right? Tip off, they get right into a lob, get kind of bring the house down, get the people on their feet. That's what he's going to do, and Morehead State's a good program. That is that's not just a team that you always go in there and roll over. That was an NCAA tournament team last year, and so great to see from Louisville. Like that's where they belong, is contending in that conference, being towards the top of that conference. It's just better for not only the conference, it's better for college basketball, and for Kentucky. I mean, you look at Mark Pope, and we saw what he did at BYU offensively. Right, like they just run. It's similar to UConn in a sense, where there's player movement, ball movement, and now he's got guys. He's got guys he can bring into Kentucky. Right, he's got higher level athletes, higher level of skill, and now you have that same offense and system baked in. And man, I got the Wright State jersey behind me. Like those are my guys, and they came out of that game like, man, that was tough. And like a little anecdote too, after that game, one of the assistant coaches that I know was saying, hey, I walked out onto the court an hour after the game. He said basically half the arena was still there waiting to greet Mark Pope. So he's got it. He's got the energy there.
BBN's a different
deal.
You
win. It's game one, right? You got to sustain it.
Yeah. What'd you think, Matt? What was your assessment of, I hate to group them in because I know like they mortally can't stand that, but it just feels correct given that they both sort of made their debuts the same day, both have new coaches. So what did you make of both Louisville and Kentucky?
Yeah, I'm with Mike just in terms of the ball movement and player movement from Kentucky. This floor spacing. I mean, Kobe Brea is one of the most efficient three-point shooters in the entire country. What he did at Dayton, he comes off the bench, he plays 20 minutes, goes for 18, hits 4 for 4 from 3. There's just such great spacing. A lot of times when you see teams play in transition on the offensive end of the floor, they've got a 5-man that's running to the rim. And sometimes in transition on offense, when you're running to the rim, it clogs the floor. They don't do that. They just keep it completely spaced. So great start. But again, you want to talk about a pressure-filled place. How does this team respond when adversity hits? Because BBN is not patient. They've run off, coaches that have won national championships before because they aren't patient. And when that adversity hits, how does that whole team respond? How does Mark Pope respond? I mean, he's coaching at his alma mater. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do either. So thought they looked great. I think the offensive, the excitement with how they're playing on offense too, is what ignites that fan base. I think that's important too, especially early.
Yeah, John, we're gonna just throw you all the tough questions, bro, because you got all these different hometowns, man. You're built for this. If each team was a stock, you can only buy one, right? Is it Louisville this season or is it Kentucky this season?
I'm going Kentucky. Pope's was an alma mater. His genuine love for the university just shows. You saw the clip after the game. His team's hugging him. They're all in the middle. His first win. The energy. And they had 30 assists on 39 buckets. So you see the vision. You see what he wants to implement. And like we stated, they're going to get the highest of the high-level athletes, the best of the best talent. It is Kentucky. I think he's going to turn this thing around faster than most people expect. Especially day one, which day one matters, man. They feel good. You're playing together as a team, as a unit. They're shooting a lot of threes. They're a fun team to watch.
Yeah. All right. We got about a little over 60 seconds. It's that time of the evening where we do our toast of the night. Matt, you already gave yours away, so why don't you kick us off with our toast of the night?
I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to go Ron Sanchez.
Oh, another one.
First game as a head coach at Virginia. He's got an opportunity to interview for the job for the next 32 games. So toast to Ron Sanchez on his first win for Virginia.
All right, toast indeed.
Got a Gatorade Zero, Matt?
That is a Gatorade Zero.
It's good.
You got to watch his calories.
Us Gators, we only drink Gatorade. Come on, man.
I respect it.
It's not a Coors Light. I mean, come on.
I'm gonna go Alice Caravan, but I'm going for the 7 blocks. That's impressive. Toast of the night defensively. I'm a shot blocking guy, so shout out to Caravan for getting on that blocks. 7 is impressive, man.
Mike, finish us off, man.
I'm gonna go in a slightly different direction. I'm gonna go with
What's your drink, Mike?
First division. I'm gonna go with Mercyhurst. Got a big ass water bottle. First Division I win. Welcome to the club. I'm going with Mercyhurst on the board.
Toast.
That's a high level right there. Right.
That's a big
Mercyhurst.
And also,
I like that.
Like, we would be remiss if we did not give the big fella at Creighton, Ryan Kalkbrenner, a toast, right? I mean, he did something since that nobody's done since Bill Walton. Come on, man. So toast to Ryan Kalkbrenner on a great night, even though that game was weirdly closer than it should have been. So, look, that's neither here nor there. It's another year of college basketball, and we'll obviously be with you throughout the season here at Field of 68. We'll be back on Friday with After Dark. So for John Henson, for Matt McCall, for Mike LaTulip, I'm John Martin. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Friday.